just got the last buff points I needed for a new keyboard.
Hello guys, welcome back to another video on Roblox's new event, The Hunt. In today's video, we are going to be getting 2 badges from Catalog Avatar Creator. So here you go. I'm sure you guys saw this in my leaks video. They've got some like awesome medieval battle going on. I'm going to be using Team Overseer because these guys are awesome. And yeah, let me show you the badges quickly. So we're actually getting 2 in this video. So you get one for like completing it, like, you know, your team wins. And then you also get one for joining. There is another badge that nobody's got just yet, so I don't know what that does. But yeah, I guess we're going to get both of these. So let's jump into a game and I'll show you what to do. So when you guys are inside of Catalog Avatar Creator, what you want to do is look to your right hand side and you're going to see a button called The Hunt First Edition. So you want to go and click on this and it will tell you about the new event. So you're going to click on play event and it's going to teleport you into a very old looking Roblox server. I really like what Money's done with this. This is awesome. So as you can see, you spawn in just like the old sort of Roblox capture the flag. Roblox and team deathmatch events, and you can go ahead and pick a team. Sometimes you might try a team and it will say it's full, so yeah, that was a bit annoying. The first time I played this, I joined a team that was doing so bad. There were so many noobs, they kept on dying, and it only had a minute left, so I was like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely not going to be winning this round. But it doesn't matter because that round ended and I was able to play a fresh round from the start. So you guys can choose capture the flag or team deathmatch. It seems like most people choose team deathmatch, so I guess that's what we're going with. And once the round starts, you will be able to pick a fresh team. So obviously you can choose whoever you want, like the Redcliffe Knights, Core Blocks, Overseers, whatever you want really. I tried to go with Overseers because I know these guys are like OP and they look awesome. So finally I got it. I just had to spam the join button. And yeah, let me tell you guys the controls. So if you want to do a forward roll, you press Q on your keyboard. You've got 1 for your sword, you've got 2 for your bow, and 3 is your staff, which will actually
To be clear, Fulfill is a protein bar, not a candy bar. Don't let its creamy, chocolatey goodness confuse.
Hey there, young adventurer. Can you spare a moment for an old man's dream? I've been strumming my guitar, dreaming of making it big in the music in the diamond with this.
so to get this badge, this is what to invite. Just walk down into the subway area. Thief took them, could you get them back? Of course I can. Basic one. So you do need to find the homeless guy, which is going to be all the way over here. What was that? So let's see. From that portrait of me. Okay. Alright guys, so what you want to do is just draw a bunch of nothing, like I just done. Alright guys, so what you want to do is just draw a bunch of nothing, like I just done. When the game will recognize that you just drawed a little bit. Hey yo, what the hell? But yeah, let's just go ahead and find all of the cans. Get that. yeah, just follow where I go, guys. We're gonna get Oliver canned. I'll be back on.
I lost someone years ago. Now I'm looking for him.
There are lots of bad movies on streaming platforms, but I'm gonna make the worst rated one.
I'm gonna write a script, make the movie, show it in a theater, and then go to someone I know who has multiple films and shows on Netflix to ask him,
Do you think there's any way that we could get this movie on Netflix?
but first, I need actors and a crew, so I'm asking my friends to help.
Are you asking for my help because I've already made the worst rated movie on?
Have y'all seen the movie The Room? Essentially what it is, it's a movie that is so bad, it became like a cult classic, and I think there's an opportunity for us to do the same thing. I think we can make a movie that is so bad that people fall in love with it. And then y'all become famous movie stars, and I become a famous... No, this is a really big deal. You okay?
Say it like that.
No. All right, let's get started. What are some things that we want to be in this movie? Like maybe like we look at some some bad movie tropes and just try to incorporate those into this movie.
This should be easy for Ethan. He's watched like all the Mission Impossibles.
Those are good movies, dude.
Like, I guess we start, like, what type of movie do we want to make? Do we want to make, like...
I kind of do really want to make an action movie, bro, because it's so easy just to make them bad. VFX could be like... terrible.
Yeah.
Explosion in the background.
Yes.
Yeah, can I like carry an actual gun?
What?
Whoa. No.
Can I have a gun?
No.
Who is he?
A struggling young man down on his luck assembles a mannequin infused with his most heartfelt artistry, but gets separated from his beloved creation. His life then changes when he encounters the mannequin again at his store, realizing it's not a simple toy. In ancient Egypt, a woman named Emmy Hesirei hides in a crypt pretending to be a model. Her mother finds her there, reprimanding her for rejecting a number of suitors, and is now determined to marry her off to a camel dung dealer. Emmy resists the prospects of marriage and instead wishes to be free to pursue other interests, like invention and flying. She prays to the gods to help her find a better way to live, but as her mother expresses dismay, the crypt begins to tremble. Emmy suddenly disappears in a puff of smoke, leaving her mother clutching a piece of her clothing. In modern-day Philadelphia, a young man named Jonathan Switcher giddily takes his time assembling a female mannequin in a factory. His boss turns up, scolding him for taking too long at his job. Jonathan, an aspiring sculptor, defends his emphasis on quality, but he gets fired anyway. Later, Jonathan finds another job making balloon animals at a birthday party, but after unintentionally causing a boy to float away on a giant balloon, he gets fired again. A little while later, he tries to integrate his sculpting instincts on a hedge trimming job, from which he is dismissed once again. The same thing happens at a pizzeria, where he takes time decorating the pizzas. That night, Jonathan picks up his girlfriend, Roxy, at her workplace, Illustra, on his motorcycle. Roxy hurries him up to avoid the regional manager, BJ Wirt, but the man notices them anyway. Later, while they eat ice cream, Roxy expresses disappointment at Jonathan's rather unrealistic attitude toward life. Roxy leaves in a cab, and Jonathan is stuck pushing his faulty motorcycle in the rain. Down on his luck, he comes across a store where the mannequin he carefully built is displayed. Jonathan expresses affection for it, saying how creating the mannequin made him feel like an artist. He leaves in high spirits, promising to see the mannequin again. The next morning, in front of the store, Jonathan meets an old lady who turns out to be the owner. She chatters about having taken over the store, Prince and Company, from her father and her grandfather before him. After Jonathan saves the owner from the falling 100th anniversary sign being installed in front of the building, the woman hires him on the spot in gratitude. Afterward, Jonathan and the owner stroll through the spacious and extravagant department store as the woman admits to having a tough time managing the mostly empty premises. In one of the store's offices, a manager named Mr. Richard connives with BJ about buying Prince and Company. Jonathan and the owner, Claire Timken, show up, and she instructs Richards to give the young man a job in return for saving her life. Once Mrs. Timken leaves, Richards briefly interviews Jonathan about his work experience. The young man conveys his creative preferences, particularly with mannequins, but Richards claims he knows just the right job. Jonathan is sent to work as a stock boy, happily calling Roxy to report the news with slight exaggeration and telling her he'll see her that night. Meanwhile, Roxy rejects gross advances from her colleague, Armand. Back in the store, Jonathan occasionally steals a few moments with a mannequin, admitting he is in love with his creation. A window dresser named Hollywood Montrose catches him in the act and lightly teases his fondness for the mannequin. That night, Jonathan encounters the head of security, Felix Maxwell, who views him with suspicion and mockery. Later, after some animated chat while fixing up the display window, Hollywood leaves Jonathan alone with the mannequin. The figure comes to life in the form of Emmy, cheerfully introducing herself to a thoroughly confused and terrified Jonathan. Emmy credits him with creating the body she currently inhabits, explaining that she came from ancient Egypt. Jonathan continues to question his sanity even as he follows an excited Emmy out of the store. Meanwhile, Roxy curses Jonathan, who she was supposed to meet that night. Back in the store's workshop, Emmy marvels at all the power tools, nearly shooting Jonathan in the face with a nail gun. She grabs and praises his hands as they look into each other's eyes. Emmy later proposes they do something unique for the store and takes off her clothes. Jonathan hurriedly covers her up to Emmy's delight. Jonathan wakes up the next morning inside the display window and finds Emmy has turned back into a mannequin. He dashes off, completely missing the tennis-inspired redesign of the display. Armand tries to pick up Roxy outside her apartment building when Jonathan arrives to talk to her. Angry at being stood up, Roxy gets into Armand's car out of spite and dismisses Jonathan's story about the mannequin coming to life. When he returns home, Jonathan calls and interrogates his mom about whether their family has any history of mental illness. Later on, at the store, Jonathan squeezes his way past a crowd buzzing with excitement at the display window. Hollywood sees him from behind the glass and applauds him for his incredible design work. Meanwhile, at Illustra, BJ implies building a second store and leaving Roxy in charge of the current one. However, one of the employees runs to BJ, raving about Prince and company's window display, backtracking quickly at the look on his boss's face. After BJ leaves, the employee then gushes to Roxy about the display. That same day, BJ discovers that a stock boy created the display, berating Richards on the phone for potentially upending their plans for Prince and company. Richards, who also seems to have been promised oversight of Illustra, assures him that the sale will proceed. At a board meeting at Prince & Company later, Richards attempts to frame Jonathan's work as something unfavorable to the store. Outside the boardroom, Jonathan and Hollywood think of ways to avert the former's seeming dismissal. Behind the doors, Richards continues to discredit Stockboy and hastens the discussion of selling the store to Illustra. Mrs. Timken, however, stalls Richards by opting to give their new displays a chance to revive the store's sales. Most of the board members agree with Mrs. Timken's idea and vote to postpone the sale for 6 weeks. After the meeting adjourns, Jonathan is brought in, and Mrs. Timken promotes him to visual merchandiser in charge of designing the displays. Jonathan says that the current display might just be a fleeting inspiration, but Mrs. Timken encourages him. Before leaving the store, Richards instructs Felix to monitor Jonathan as he works the window displays at night. That evening, Jonathan approaches Emmy again, and she comes to life, regaling him with tales about ex-boyfriends like Christopher Columbus. She reveals that she's traveled to different places and eras in history, but nothing felt quite right. In the audio section, when Jonathan asks if Emmy can still help him design the window displays, she quickly agrees. Their faces get closer, but Emmy accidentally sits on an audio control panel, setting off the sound system that blasts music. This fascinates Emmy, who urges Jonathan to dance, and they do so throughout the store. They go through aisle after aisle, trying on different outfits and generally just enjoying each other's company. Hollywood then shows up and Jonathan sees that Emmy has turned back into a mannequin. The window dresser notices that Jonathan seems to be bonding with the mannequin again, but just chalks it up to Jonathan's creative nature. After Hollywood leaves, Emmy returns to life and tells Jonathan that he's the only one who can see her like that. Meanwhile, Felix hears Jonathan talking in the elevator and ambushes him with his dog, Rambo. The dog flees, yelping, just as Felix sees Jonathan casually carrying the mannequin away. Before Felix can finish his threats, he gets stuck between the elevator doors. That night, Emmy and Jonathan finish designing their latest display, a cycling-inspired scene with a moving background. The next day, the window attracts another sizable crowd as Mrs. Timken congratulates Jonathan. Later, Roxy calls Jonathan to invite him to lunch at a fancy restaurant. He agrees, despite the fact he once caused a fire there, but is unaware that it was a scheme between BJ and Roxy. At lunchtime, Jonathan meets Roxy at the restaurant, and she proceeds to invite him to work as a window dresser for Illustra. Jonathan says he's working with a beautiful woman, but Roxy replies it's okay. Jonathan turns down the offer, saying he's finally found a place where he belongs and leaves the table. He then bumps into a server with a flaming dish, causing a small fire at a nearby table which he tries to put out with the waiters to pay. Meanwhile, Felix informs Richards of Jonathan's suspicious activity, especially of his dog's fear of the mannequins. Richards wonders if Jonathan is working with someone else and orders Felix to find out. That night, Emmy and Jonathan finish designing another inspired display with a beach theme. At the same time, Felix patrols the store while Roxy and Armand manage to sneak inside, aiming to find out who Jonathan's beautiful collaborator is. Back at the display, Emmy and Jonathan fool around as Felix, Roxy, and Armand track where the noise is coming from. Felix catches Jonathan rolling around with the mannequin just as Armand spies the scene from a distance and takes pictures. Roxy pushes her companion down the escalator after he makes several distasteful comments. Jonathan explains to Felix how playing with the mannequin is how he gets inspiration, but the security guard engages him in a fistfight. Felix smacks Jonathan around the store shelves, but the young man tackles his foe into a stack of soccer balls. Emmy kicks Felix to distract him, and Jonathan goes for a knockout punch. Emmy assures Jonathan that she wasn't seen. While playing in the store, Emmy comes to Jonathan rushes down and calls to her, alerting Felix, who goes to investigate. Emmy spots the guard and his dog snooping around below and aims the glider down. She crashes into Felix, knocking him unconscious as she celebrates her flight, but falls into Jonathan's arms in a dizzy state. Later, while cuddling in a mountain of teddy bears, Jonathan expresses affection for Emmy. They almost kiss, but Jonathan suddenly remembers they haven't finished the window setup. Emmy frets about the half-dressed dummies, but Jonathan has an idea. The next day, a large crowd marvels at the store's latest display, a fashionable Emmy stopping the half-dressed mannequins from getting on a bus. Hollywood praises it while BJ sulks in the street. Inside the store, Richards wakes Felix, still slumped in a cluster of dummies. The guard reports that Jonathan is fooling around with the mannequin just as Mrs. Timken arrives and reprimands the two. Richards defends Felix's testimony, but Mrs. Timken sees nothing wrong with Jonathan's methods. Jonathan arrives and the owner congratulates him on another brilliant window, then fires both Richards and Felix. As Jonathan's displays make headlines, Prince & Company gains more customers, and he continues to create artistic windows with Emmy. Meanwhile, Illustra's sales plummet, causing BJ to howl in frustration during a meeting. At Prince & Company, Mrs. Timken announces that Jonathan is set to become the youngest vice president in the company's history. Back at Illustra, Armand and Roxy show BJ the pictures they took of Jonathan hugging the mannequin. Thinking of how such images could damage Jonathan's reputation, BJ decides to use them to his advantage. At Prince & Company, Jonathan takes Emmy to the ladies' room to tell her the good news. He goes on about the perks of the job but reiterates to Emmy that he won't take it unless they can be together. She tells him he can't worry about what will happen to them, and they kiss passionately. Outside the restroom, Hollywood interrupts a couple of employees who are eavesdropping on Jonathan, then goes inside himself. He catches Jonathan making out with the mannequin but just asks the guy to teach him how to design windows. Jonathan insists he can only work alone, much to Hollywood's despair. Later, Jonathan tries to enlist Emmy's help with Hollywood, but she reminds him she can't come alive in front of somebody else. Emmy is confident in Jonathan creating a masterpiece and tells him she'll be in the window. Afterward, Jonathan gets inspired by Hollywood's offhand comment and instructs the latter on the materials they need. Meanwhile, at Illustra, BJ and Richards recruit Felix to steal Jonathan's favorite mannequin in exchange for a job at the store. In the evening, Jonathan and Emmy dress up and examine the latest window display, a scene depicting a photo shoot. Emmy praises it and Jonathan credits her as his inspiration, claiming she's part of him now. As the two prepare to leave for a date on Jonathan's motorcycle, Roxy arrives with Armand. Jonathan introduces her to Emmy, who appears as a mannequin. Roxy tries to recruit Jonathan one more time, but he declines, saying he doesn't need Illustra when he's got people who cares about him now. Jonathan rides away as Roxy yells threats to the wind. Upset at the mannequin, Roxy gets into Armand's car and gives in to his indecent proposals. Afterward, Felix and Richards are in a car planning their theft when they see Jonathan and the mannequin pass by. Felix gives chase, weaving clumsily through traffic and crashing into cars, but manages to stay on Jonathan's tail. Felix pursues the motorcycle into an alley and jumps up a ramp, only to get stuck between the walls as Jonathan gets away. Finally managing to explore the modern world outside, Emmy enjoys the motorcycle ride with Jonathan, and they later share a sweet moment at a pier. The two spend an intimate night together at the store, professing their love for each other as Jonathan falls asleep. As Emmy gets up to return to the display window, Felix and Richards break into Prince & Company's premises. Confused about which dummy they are looking for, the two men just take a bunch of mannequins, including Emmy. The next day, Jonathan wakes up to applause from a crowd of store patrons. Hollywood then arrives and tells him that a couple of female mannequins have disappeared, including Emmy. Jonathan jumps up and runs to the window, seeing for himself that he makes a mad dash to Illustra in Hollywood's car and tracks down Roxy in the boardroom along with BJ and Richards. BJ entices the young man with a lucrative job offer, but Jonathan slams him to the wall, demanding to know where Emmy is. Pissed, Roxy tells Jonathan he'll never see the mannequin again and walks off as Jonathan punches Richards before pursuing her. Felix, BJ, Richards, and the squad of security guards all chase after Jonathan. Jonathan does a slide tackle to dodge the guards, knocking down rack after rack across the store to evade more security. As the young man fights off the guards, Roxy wheels out a cart containing the stolen mannequins into the trash compactor room. She dumps the mannequins into the conveyor belt and activates it just as Jonathan stumbles into a hallway, still being pursued by the guards. Hollywood rescues Jonathan by blasting away the guards with a fire hose, as Roxy smugly watches the mannequins get shredded one by one. Jonathan reaches the compactor room and runs up the conveyor belt to get Emmy, reaching for the mannequin's hand. Then, the mannequin soon comes to life. Jonathan pulls Emmy up with overwhelming effort as a worker turns off the compactor. Emmy notices that she's still human even as the worker sees her, and thanks the gods before locking lips with Jonathan. Afterward, Jonathan mockingly greets Roxy and introduces Emmy to Hollywood as he enters the compactor room. BJ, Felix, and Richards barge in with a bunch of cops as the executive orders the police to arrest Jonathan. Mrs. Timken then arrives and instead orders the arrest of